Howdy, and welcome to Early Reflections, the podcast where young folks talk about making it in the sonic arts. I'm your host, Adam Daniel Jones, and my guest today, all the way from Ecuador, is the incredible Felipe Maldonado. Felipe, how you doing, dude?
Hey Adam, what's up? Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing really good.
Good, awesome. I'm so pumped. Yeah, we were just talking before we started recording, but you were one of the definitive people I knew I wanted to have on this podcast because, and it's kind of interesting because we cross paths a little bit, as we'll talk about later, but we never really collaborated on anything or did anything. I guess we kind of did. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but overall, we kind of ran in similar circles, and I've always kind of wanted to talk to you about how you approach making stuff. So yeah, I'm just super pumped that we can do that now.
Sounds awesome. Yeah. It's really, really cool that we're doing this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, before we get into it, what are your pronouns that you use that I can refer to you as?
Him.
Cool. Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So for the audience, Felipe, you go by Mojo Mist as your performer name. You're a singer, a songwriter, producer, engineer, performer, like I previously said. What else would you kind of describe yourself as, creatively? Did I kind of hit all the bases, or what else would you really describe yourself as?
Well, I guess this past year I've been trying to also become a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
With what I can, obviously. This year, because of the pandemic, I sort of explored, especially the bass and the keys, which I never really played that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's the only thing.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Yeah, the multi-instrumentalism, and especially with the kind of music that I know that you're making now, obviously, and that I've heard you in previous bands make. I was so surprised. I'm surprised that you hadn't already been playing those, or hadn't spent as much time. So on the Mojo Mist stuff, are you playing pretty much everything?
Yeah, I'm playing almost everything. I just recorded with my friend Julia from Italy. She recorded some violin.
Cool.
And then Tommaso, you remember Tommaso? He's the piano player. He recorded well, my mom's doing some backing vocals too, actually. It's pretty fun to work with her.
Oh, your mom?
Yeah, she's in it. In the last song of the record, she's singing a couple of lines that I told her to sing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. The whole musical family kind of thing. That's so cool.
I guess the reason why I didn't really explore those instruments while we were in college is just because I was surrounded by so many amazing people, that allowed me to have more a mindset of a producer and bring in these people to just give the best out of them. And when I used to write songs, I used to, for example, the guitar player of my band In the Universe, he's just incredibly amazing. But my role as a songwriter there was to kind of leave the space that I knew that he could take and do stuff that I would never even imagine of doing. So this time awesome. It was a bit different.
Yeah, shout out Sagiv. I love him. So so kind of off of that, so talk to me a little bit about sort of your upbringing, through your childhood and everything, and sort of the role that music had in it, and then maybe sort of tracing it through your adolescence and to your adulthood, and what kind of drove you to considering music as a career path.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I was lucky enough that my high school had a pretty good music program, which is sort of how I got induced into actually studying a bit music, I guess. But I was, to be 100% honest with you, I was until about 12 or 11 years old a total sports guy.
Oh, cool.
I used to love playing sports when I was little. Yeah, but actually, the day that I discovered the drums, I was like, wait, this is much cooler,
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually started, the first instrument I played in school was the clarinet, actually. And I was there for a year. And it was either that, to play clarinet and start playing a saxophone later on, or but I had the chance to change to drums, which is what I really wanted to do. So I started playing drums in jazz bands in school, and we would play national music and rock and just basic big band stuff, for young kids. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, with time I just had my high school bands, build my band called Los Niños del Árbol, which is the kids of the tree. And Dance Linolio, that was my second band in high school. We used to play, covers like Arctic Monkeys, The Libertines, that sort of stuff. And we used to try to write our own songs too.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. Besides I mean, I had my music projects in high school, and then through high school we also got to tour around Ecuador, and we went to play in the US once, and just kind of like slowly formed into this thing that I enjoyed more and more. Um, I guess the first time I decided that I wanted to do something like artistic was when I saw my brother was in a really advanced art class in high school, and I just remember one day like his door was half open, and I saw him in his room, and he was drawing, and he was listening to the song "Roslyn" by Bon Iver and Saint Vincent. I don't know if
Mm.
you've heard of it, but he was listening to this song painting, and I was just like, I just fell in love with the moment and seeing him like so inspired that I guess I wanted to pursue something that made me feel the same way. Uh, so I guess that's how it just developed in high school, like a lot of people who make music nowadays. And then I went into college, but I wanted to study music production and engineering. I didn't actually wanted to pursue so much more like an artistic as career as a musician. But I guess being there also a lot of people made me understand like the potential that I had and liked what I did. So I just kind of kept going.
Yeah, man, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, again, like you had kind of mentioned is, Berkeley as like that environment. It's so everybody is so talented, and
Yeah,
sort of like by proxy, like everybody, like will force different like ideas out of you creatively, and like really again like make you consider doing stuff that you would not have thought of doing. So like
for
I
sure.
kind of feel like I came from a similar position like at school, is that I knew that I didn't necessarily, I wanted to kind of look at my major as more of like a technical thing. I did the
Mm.
electronic production design major. But yeah, it's like a different kind of, and obviously creativity is gonna like weave itself into those like arts regardless. So I think that it's sort of like a natural thing, is like, like everybody kind of at Berkeley, I think in the tech majors like really recognizes their own like, compositional ability and songwriting
Hmm.
ability sort of by proxy, which I think is really cool.
For sure, yeah. And I think that the most special thing is when you surround yourself with people that maybe study other things, that all of a sudden you're complimenting them a lot and they're complimenting you. And then you actually like understand your strengths and your weaknesses as well. And that was pretty cool to me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, yeah, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I'm, just kind of curious in general, like, so, well, for one, what city in Ecuador are you like from, and are you maybe living in right now?
From the capital. I'm from Quito. Small city.
Awesome. Oh, really? Like, how big in general is it? Like,
I mean, Ecuador is not that big. I don't know if you've seen it in a map. We're a little thingy.
oh yeah,
But it's really
that's
a
cool.
beautiful country in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious, like in general, like what was the music scene kind of like when you were coming up? You talked about you had the opportunity to tour around and stuff, and there were bands and you had collaborators and everything, but like what in general, like what kind of music is coming out of there? Is there a lot of, pop stuff? Is it more kind of lean to more like Latin music? Like what does it look like?
It's more like indie rock, I guess. And I think Ecuador is very particular because maybe there's a good thing and a bad thing to this, but I've always said that this might be a little bit of the problem in the industry here, is that I feel like Ecuador never
Mm,
really went through like a really important or drastic social experience that made people kind of need music as a way out. And by this I don't mean only like the musicians, but actually society, like going
mhm,
out to listen to music and find out new things. So I guess that's why in a certain way, like a lot of the cool indie underground stuff that comes out from Ecuador is a bit like Americanized in a way,
mhm,
like we do have like national music and that kind of stuff, but there's just there's just a different appetite, I guess. And when I grew up, while I was growing up here, actually there wasn't that many things to explore. I mean, like the music was in the internet, but Ecuador has always had this problem of not having too many places to play live, actually.
mhm.
And when I went to Berkeley, it's when actually like the industry started developing way more, and a bunch of festivals were created and more places and more bands. And every time I would come here in the summer, I would like notice this change in energy and like just
Yeah.
people like kind of going forward more, which was really, really cool. And unfortunately, of course, I was only here a year, and then the pandemic hit. But um, I've been able to actually collaborate with most of the people that I really looked up to when I was younger, because the
Cool.
industry is not that big either. Like it's not that hard to get into it if you really just like put the work and kind of build the social skills to approach these people. But for me, that has been really like amazing, because when I came back, like the people that I was the most intimidated by and the most inspired by when I was little were the ones that actually like have been opening a lot of doors for me here, and I've been working with them. There's this artist called Mauro Samaniego, which he's part of one of the biggest bands here that's called Dapon.
Mm.
And I was the engineer for the album that's coming out right now of his solo project, and I'm playing in his band too. So it's just been really cool to see like this people like open this space for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's such an interesting observation, like hearing the about, have not having like kind of the absence of like a big
Hmm.
social kind of awakening in a way that kind of, made the indie rock scene more Americanized. That's super interesting, because obviously we're in the States, we're used to having, music sort of be that thing that everybody rallies around, especially during like times of strife, obviously now during the pandemic, but in history, obviously like there's some really incredible music came out of, New York post 9/11.
For
Some
sure.
really really awesome like alternative sort of indie music came out of that scene.
Hmm.
So that's super interesting, and like hearing the Ecuador kind of, and but I don't think there's anything wrong with that in a way, but like having it like look to the outside to sort of have those like big stylistic things be so like influential.
Yeah.
I think that also like just brings in sort of another like level of like uniqueness to the sound.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I don't. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like the outcome is basically the music that comes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like we kind of, when people started becoming really interested in making music, it was sort of, we were already in a place where the world was pretty globalized with internet and social media and stuff, and we didn't go through what a lot of Latin American countries went through, in their governments or oppression, or
Right.
even the US, with blues and absolutely everything that has been going on there that made the music that
Mhm.
comes out today from there.
Yeah, man. That's super interesting. Yeah, like
Mm,
again, obviously like yeah, politics is like the biggest driving force in like, you know, influencing really cool and awesome music, I
for
feel like
sure.
in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Yeah, so, sort of moving on a little bit. So, for our listeners, the two of us met at Berkeley, sort of in this interesting scene. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But what was like your first impressions of Berkeley? I think we kind of alluded to this a little bit ago, but for you, did you feel like it was like really overwhelming when you first got there, or did you have like a relatively easy time, kind of, finding your group there? What was that like for you?
I mean, man, to be honest, for me, it was like, this is the place I have to be.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I guess just the first couple of weeks was just a little bit weird, because it was like, when you leave your country is an absolute different experience, and once you're there, and like the first day you literally go into like the cafeteria or somewhere where there's a lot of students, and you feel like everyone already knows each other, and a lot
Right.
of people actually did know each other because of 5 week and that stuff.
Hmm.
But so in that sense, it was like a bit hard just to know like, who am I going to like join. And I ended up, my best friends became all the Italians basically. I lived with them. You probably went
Nice.
to a couple of the
Yeah, man.
parties we used to
Yeah,
do.
dude. The tunnel. That
The
place was
tunnel, yeah. It
legendary.
was legendary, man, for sure, for sure. So I mean, that took a little bit more of time, but I guess in terms of language and like, I don't know, my capabilities and like what I had to do, I was pretty confident of where I was. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've with my family, we've always been the kind of people that were like, just leave your country and go explore. So that was never really like, that was more exciting than anything,
Yeah,
more
totally.
than scary or anything.
Yeah, that's super
Hmm.
interesting. Like I feel like in here in the States, it's kind of it can be, similar, is that I know plenty of people, from my hometown who were like, oh, I'm, never gonna leave. I'm totally cool here. But, I had a really similar family where they were like, yo, you gotta go explore shit. You gotta like
Mm.
see the world. You got, even if it's just going to school, like, a 5 hour flight on the other side of the country. Like
Hmm.
it's a similar, obviously, societally, but and everything, but like it's culturally, like there are such huge differences, particularly,
Yeah.
I'm from Oregon and then going to Boston, like it's a big shift. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that's something I actually love about the US. Like it's just you go from East Coast to West Coast, and even though it's the same country and stuff, there's still a bunch of differences in how people act and think. So yeah, I can imagine for you it's also like
Yeah.
even just moving states, it's a different experience. That's really cool. Ecuador, as I was telling you, is like this size, you know. So it's like, yeah. So like, if you move to a different city in Ecuador, it's like, what am I doing, man? There's
Right.
no
Yeah.
difference whatsoever, I guess. I mean, there is, but you know what I mean. It's not like
Totally.
that
Yeah.
huge.
No, I feel you. That's so funny. But yeah, so sort of getting more into specifics. So the first time I met you, I was actually like playing a sub gig or doing like a sub session, and it was at your apartment. It was at when you guys were running the crab sessions.
Yeah,
I was filling in on drums for Eva and the Oak.
yeah.
And you were the engineer. So I just remember like that was sort of my first like foray into the like underground scene, because I think I was only a sophomore then, so I hadn't really
Mm-hmm.
kind of been ingratiated. I was still living on campus and everything at Berkeley, so I hadn't really been ingratiated into the whole sort of underground scene that was there. But yeah, so kind of talk to, for those who don't know, tell them about what the crab sessions was and like what you guys were like aiming to do with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I started the crab sessions, to be honest, just because I had to bring up my skills as an engineer. I
Yeah.
mean, I've always loved like KXP and NPR and that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
man.
So I knew that if I one day wanted to do something like that, I wanted to try something like that. That was like so I started the crab sessions, and it was basically this concept of just bringing local bands to record in my room. So it was a lot of work actually, because every single time that a band would come in, we would have to tear the apartment up. Like we would have to literally take
Yeah.
everything out of my room and just like treat it as an empty room, you know, because Boston apartments are small and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but it was pretty cool. It's like I got to know people. Um, I got to know you because of that, you know, and it was cool. It was just like a challenge for me of like, okay, you're in college, you're gonna do this absolutely for free. Just learn how to like work professionally with people, like step your game up when it comes to engineering, even when when it's like such a simple session and stuff. And I also wanted to get into video, so
Hmm.
I was doing the video, I was editing everything, and I was mixing. So it was just kind of like a little project that I knew I had to do, which is a shame though, because um, I haven't been able to get back the my login information for YouTube, which kind of sucks because
Oh.
I wanted to continue. Because since I changed my American number to the Ecuadorian number, the only way that I can get a code to like change the password is if I have my American number active. So I kind
Oh
of left the
man.
project aside for a bit, which is a bit of a shame, but it's fine. I mean, I'm doing more stuff, and I knew that it was just like a trial project to kind of do stuff, you know.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. Like that again is like such a like a very distinctively college student thing to do, is like, you got to make those opportunities, like, and especially in a place like Berkeley
Mm.
where there's so many cool singer-songwriters and everything and bands, like, yeah, you got to like having the willingness for you guys. Again, like we did the session at your place. You guys tore everything out. I'm pretty sure your bed was like in the hallway of your apartment for me to like set my fucking drums up. It was so good.
Yeah,
I love
that
that.
was every Saturday, man. Every Saturday. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good on you. Good on you, man. Yeah, you guys provided
Thanks,
a
man.
really cool thing for people to do there.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
man.
was fun.
Yeah, so continuing on from there, so I think that I actually the band that I was playing in that we did I eventually became the drummer of, which was Eva and the Oak. We
Mm-hmm.
we like co-build your band in the universe's first show, I believe, which was in the basement of
Yeah, dude.
Teachers Lounge in Alston.
That was awesome. I'm never gonna forget that day. It was
Oh
awesome,
man,
man.
yeah,
I
it
really
was
enjoyed playing
so
with you
packed
guys.
there. I loved it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really fun, man. I really enjoyed playing with you guys, and even the Oak. And I met Maddie, I was like, oh, she's really good. Like I feel like she has a really cool potential and like really cool vibe. I wish we did more together. Actually, I wish I could have, I don't know, like engineered something of you guys, or produced a single with Maddie or something. But maybe in the
Yeah.
future, who knows?
Yeah, man, exactly. That's kind of the good thing about like the working remotely is because like it gives people like the opportunity to work like figuring out sort of the workflow stuff and everything is like giving more people that maybe wouldn't have been able to work together in the first place if they weren't in the same city. Like
Mm-hmm.
considering you're in Ecuador, I think Maddie's like in North Carolina now or maybe New York, but yeah, man, that I'm sure that the possibility is still open.
For sure.
Yeah, dude. But again, like I was gonna say, like so I just distinctly remember the y'all had so much gear because there were six of you, and I remember Aaron who was doing a lot of like your sound effects and everything. He had to set up like way off stage, like by the mixing board.
Yeah.
But that was so cool. Like I remember that, and Tommaso had like all of like two or three different synths, like really cool ones stacked up on each other, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, y'all brought the house down then. So like talk to me a little bit, outside of that show, like what your experience with that house show scene was like how many of those you guys did, and you guys ran the tunnel, which was an
Yeah.
establishment at Berkeley that we saw a lot of cool shows at. So
Yeah,
just talk to me a little bit about that.
for sure. I mean, it was fun. I feel like it was the coolest thing to do in Boston, I guess. You know, I never really enjoyed the Latin vibe of going to these huge clubs and spending a lot of money and that kind of stuff. So I was way more of a house party slash house shows guy. And yeah, the tunnel was kind of this idea we
Hmm.
had. It was a 5 bedroom apartment, not that big for the people who are listening to, and the concept was just to not try to not make like trashy parties, but actually treat people like they matter a lot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of house parties and a lot of house shows are really cool, but sometimes you can feel like I don't know, like the hospitality is not the same, I guess.
Yeah.
So for us, it was about like giving you guys a beer, and if you stayed till this was tradition. If you stayed until like 2 a.m., we would literally cook pasta for 60 people. Like we would go shopping at the
Yeah, I
beginning of
remember
the
that.
semester and buy like we would buy 200 packs of pasta, man. And if you stayed until 2 a.m., we would give you a plate of pasta. And we had actually, I can't even remember everyone who played, but we had like 35 bands playing
Yeah.
in literally such a small apartment, man. It was amazing, and we had DJ sets and everything, and that was the concept. Just like trying to do what people were already doing in Alston, but kind of give it that feeling that the people that came like really mattered. Like we wanted to make them feel welcome and at home.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And that's so important. Yeah, it's like that whole thing, like it's so important. And y'all like kind of established that like outside of the Alston area too, because you guys were on what was it, Columbus? I maybe not
Yeah,
Columbus. I'm bad
no,
with the
for
street
sure,
names, but
Columbus.
like in south, like more South Boston
Yeah,
area, and
it was Columbus Avenue next to Northeastern. Yeah.
yeah, and y'all had the coolest like view of downtown too from your roof, which everybody would go
Mm-hmm.
up on. That was so
Yeah,
good.
that was fun. I remember it became so popular at some point that I remember doing, I think it was like around 5 week, but it was before, or I don't remember when it was, but it was in the summer. And just all of a sudden, like we made a party, and we didn't know anyone that came, but like everyone knew what the place was, and we was like, what the hell? Like, where are our friends? Like, and all these people from other colleges, and like we didn't even know what age they were, and we were like, okay, I guess come in. But that was the
Yeah.
only tunnel that it felt like actual work. Like we were like, okay, we are working. This is the stuff we have to do. But it was pretty fun. I mean, every single time it was different.
Yeah, totally. I feel you.
Mm.
That's so fun. Yeah, again, like it, and I really appreciate like what you guys were doing. I feel like y'all more so than other people, you like really again, like you had said, like tried to like sort of nail down that hospitality because if you go to Alston, not at all that scene is really vibrant and everything and really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you guys were sort of a counterpoint to that, where again, like I remember, I think I did stay one of the times for, that like 2 a.m. pasta
Mhm.
session. Like y'all were, yeah, you would not get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that you guys
Yeah.
were really unique in that
Yeah, I mean,
scene.
and that was the Italians, man. I gotta give it to them too. I learned a bunch of hospitality and love from them, even though we're also like a caring culture, I guess. But I mean, those guys had something different. Like Italians are like, okay, you're 80 people, we're gonna cook for you and we're gonna give you some love. And I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Awesome people.
Yeah, dude, that's so awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah, so moving on a little bit, so who for you, as a musician, who are like some artists that just have totally shaped the way that you, go about, engineering? It could be engineering, it could be production, it could be songwriting. And also like they don't have to be people that you like look up to. In some ways you could talk about, your
Hmm.
collaborators or whatever. Like just I'm kind of curious about like who's really,
I
influenced
guess
you.
it has changed over time. I feel like, for example, with In the
Mhm.
Universe, which was a band that like I just wanted to put like so much energy into it, and it was about having like such a like sort of an aggressive sound and just like give everything, and make like drums sound huge and make guitar sound crazy and like make this wall of sound, I guess. In that time I got really influenced by like a King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, the Morlocks,
Mhm.
the OCs, My Bloody Valentine, kind of like the shoegaze stuff, Dive, that sort of thing. And I got really influenced by Sagif there. Actually, he's the one that kind of brought me into that world. Um, but I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, depending on the project, it has varied a bit. I guess when it comes to like my band in Ecuador, I mean, it would be really stupid not to say that I was really influenced by the bands and the people that I admired when I was younger here. So there's like La Máquina
Yeah.
Camaleón, Dapón, Paula Navarrete, La Madre Tirana, El General Villamil. There's just a bunch of them that I kind of like got their just a certain vibe that I really enjoyed. And when it comes more to, I guess, like vocal inspiration, I think that, for example, since I was like 16 till now, like James Blake and Bon Iver were one of my biggest
Mhm.
inspirations. Just like kind of that with I guess Jeff Buckley, which kind of gave it more of that
Cool.
rock style. I don't know, it just kind of blended, trying to make like people really feel things, but in some of my projects are very like energetic and I would say like aggressive, but not aggressive. It's just like alternative rock, shoegaze, fun stuff.
Yeah.
And even though people might not think, actually, Bobby McFerrin is someone that when I was listening to him in college, even though it's like jazz and stuff, just his way of controlling things made me like, whoa, what the hell is this dude doing? Um,
Yeah.
so I would say that like more direct artists, and I feel like maybe for this last album that I did as Mojo Mist that I started, I became more like kind of want to work on my storytelling, you know?
Yeah.
Because before it was just about like thinking about the entire band and just like this wall of sound, super energy, and like thinking a lot, like playing live. But this time, just being alone, I was like, I want to work on my storytelling. So I think the last album of Mac Miller, the
Yeah.
one that's called Circles, right after he died, that album influenced me a lot this pandemic. Just because I started looking at these people that like kind of rapped and sang like that, and it wasn't like aggressive rapping, which is really cool. But it was more like this storytelling type of thing, like Masigo
Yeah.
and Mac Miller and even Tyler the Creator and that sort of vibe, kind of made me look at my music as like try to chill it down a bit and just like tell stories. I guess Andy Schaff too is someone that
Yeah.
this pandemic, whoa, I loved it. Nick Hakim, the latest album as well, is freaking amazing. Anderson Paak is someone that I've really been looking up to because I feel like I'm sort of taking a similar direction in the sense that when I started music, I started playing drums. That was my first instrument. And later on, I didn't talk about this when when we talked about my childhood and stuff, but the first time I sang was actually singing and playing drums.
Oh, nice.
The first song I sung was I Don't Need No Doctor by John Mayer and John Scofield. That was cool. So I had that little period in my life where I did that, and now I find myself writing a lot of my songs that way. Actually, it's like drum and voice. Like I start with the structure of the drums and the vibe, and then a melody comes on top, and then like I build sort of the harmony in the instruments below that. So yeah, that's why I think like Anderson .Paak is someone I really like too,
Yeah.
and his other projects, No Worries. That sort of vibe is, I really like it. Mild High Club too is a band I really like, and yeah, I think I said some names
Yeah,
there.
man. That's perfect. Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. And the process, like, again, as a drummer, I've never had the dexterity to be able to sing and play at the same time, other than maybe like backups. But hearing that's like a big part of your songwriting process is so interesting to me.
Yeah, man. It's actually, I mean, I've discovered this. Something I've been telling people is, if you are sort of in a creative block, sort of just bring yourself back to your roots and understand how and why you function as a musician. What I mean by this is that, like, when you first started doing things and when you first started thinking musically, it came through a certain experience that is very, very unique and particular from everyone else, And when I understood that a lot of what I had understand musically from the beginning was rhythmically and then melodically, I sort of like put the guitar aside for a bit, because I actually don't love playing guitar, to be honest. It's like, from all the instruments, I think is the one that I least like, even though I'm a frontman with a guitar, So I kind of found myself like enjoying more of my songwriting by not thinking that much harmonically, but just like being like, okay, rhythm and melody is my strength, is my thing. This is how I grew up. This is how I get to explore things. And that's why this pandemic, when I first started actually like playing bass and recording bass, I found that I think it's my favorite instrument, even though I'm not like a prodigy in any instrument, like, I must say that I try, but I found that like bass is like a really incredible resource for me, because it's literally the blend between the drums and the voice, and that was a pretty cool finding. So yeah, I don't remember what the question was, but we got here.
You nailed down a bunch of potential questions I had, so that's like the perfect thing you could have said. That was a great answer. I love that.
Awesome. That's great. I'm glad.
So, real quick, we're going to take a short break on the podcast, but coming up, we're going to talk about and analyze your music more specifically, and some of the experiences that have sort of influenced you. But first, I'm going to throw to Meditation Minute. Howdy, and welcome to the 12th edition of Meditation Minute. What I've got for you today is another recording from that great trip that I went on in Blakely Harbor. Just can't get enough of it, I didn't record that much stuff, but what I did get, I was really, really happy with. So the story behind this one is a little interesting. So I used a Wildtronics, that sort of parabolic microphone that I had talked about the last time, that has, 3 different mics in it. So you're able to get quite a few different, variations of, sound from the same source. But as I was hiking through, I saw this like drainage ditch or this drainage pipe. And it was, I love recording water in the field. And it was kind of something that I had not expected. So I hiked a little bit off the trail as carefully as I could, definitely almost tripped a couple times, but I put the Wildtronics mic on my mic stand and tried to kind of hold it as a boom, which was maybe a little misguided, but and you'll be able to hear it in the sound. You'll be able to hear sort of the mismatch in the stereo image if you listen to it on headphones. But yeah, I just love the way that the water ended up turning out, and it's just another cool thing to add to my library. So yeah, I hope you folks enjoy it. All right, and we're back. So before we kind of get into the song specifically, Felipe, where do you find yourself like the most inspired? Do you feel like it's like a physical place, or is it like a state of mind, or kind of both? You know, I think we'll talk about one of the songs specifically and your experience with it in a minute, but just sort of in general, like where do you get most of your inspiration from?
Um, I wouldn't say it's one or another. I think it's a blend of both, like being in the right place. And I think the most important thing is actually to be going through something that you have to talk about. Like, I feel like it's been really hard for me just to, and I don't want it either, but it's been really hard to just like write music to like sell or just because, like, oh, I want to write like something. Like, I would
Yeah.
say 99% of my songwriting really comes from like an experience that I'm going through, or like a feeling, whether it's happy, whether it's sad, whatever it is, that has to be there. I mean, I feel like, and I'm always going to say this, the most important thing you need to make art is to have something to say. It's like if you don't have that, you might just sell, and that's fine. But it's not what I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, but in terms of in terms of a place, yeah, I am a person that needs like my space when I'm doing this. So actually, then the album that I'm putting out, it's called Midnight Lab, because I did most of it, like 80% of the album during the night. So like from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's like kind of where I
Mm.
found this place, and I guess I describe it as like it's just like this therapeutic space where I go into my home studio and kind of explore different colors of myself, um, as a musician. So I guess that it just goes together. Like, I've always had something to say and something to talk about, but it has to definitely be either around the right people, or if I'm on my own, it has to definitely be on the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that super is important. Yeah, I love the concept of like if you know there's music that you can like aim to be like consumer like
Hmm.
grade kind of shit, but then there's the stuff that you make which is like so deeply original, like wildly interesting stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you can't find like a blend. I mean, of course, when I am like producing, I do think about the technical things that I learned in school, as a production. So
Yeah.
I guess the cool thing is when you have something to say, and then you just have these tools where you're like, okay, where in the spectrum of kind of commercial music or just like out there experimental stuff do I want to be in,
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I feel like I'm building that. I'm in right now in the process of building that craft of like kind of doing a good blend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you totally are. So let's speaking of that blend, let's talk about Lucy, the song
Hmm.
Lucy. So there's obviously like some really awesome, experimental kind of sound design aspects of it, but there's also like a relatively straightforward like pop structure to it. So like is that something, do you find that there's do you have difficulty with that, or is it something that you feel like you're able to straddle the line of pretty
No,
well?
I'm pretty confident of that now. I mean, when I was doing more like in the universe stuff, where it was more like psychedelic rock, it was just like a lot of parts and like kind of worlds that I dived into, and like complete textures that absolutely changed. But I feel like, as I was talking before, like this period of my life, I'm trying to work more on like my storytelling abilities, and I feel like really having like a structure that makes sense and that captures the listener for a certain specific amount of time allows you to have that space to tell a certain story during a verse, and then kind of like make a recap of all of that in the chorus with the feeling that you really want to portray. So I think it's actually a very, very useful tool to have like a pop structure, I guess, in that sense, if you really know how to use it. And it was funny because I was talking to a friend that really liked that song the other day, and he was like kind of pissed because he was like, "Man, why didn't you give me the intro melody at the end? Like, I'm so pissed. Like, I needed that line once again." And I was like, "Well, I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose so that you play the song again, because that's literally the psychology of listeners. Like, you want to capture their attention, but also making it in a very smart way so that if you give a hook, you don't overuse it, but you give it the right amount of time so that that person wants to hear that again." So I mean, I love playing with that. Like, Susan Rogers, she was my favorite teacher at college. She was my last music production engineering class teacher, and she's the one that taught me a lot of these things too, like how and why would you do something to kind of capture the attention of another person. I had two teachers that really changed my life in Berkeley, and it's Susan Rogers and Enrique Gonzalez.
Mm-hmm.
Those two guys, in terms of production, just like, woo,
Legends.
blew my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I'm glad that you told me about this before we recorded. You kind of keyed me into what the song is about. Yeah, well, let's talk about it now. For the listeners, what like is this experience like? Is this song is like the influence for it? Like, what are you basing it off of?
For sure. Yeah. Before I say anything, I just want to say also that a lot of the times I have a personal experience when I'm writing, but I also, as we're talking about elements of production, I try to make the concept or the lyrics in a way that it can be relatable to everyone, so that if you listen to the lyrics, it may not be my experience, but it may be yours, you know? So actually the story comes from my first trip of acid, which was it was a really amazing and eye-opening experience for sure. And because the most important thing is that I looked at it as a very, very like spiritual experience, which I liked a lot. So I kind of impersonated the trip into this entity called Lucy, which I kind of, to be honest, stole from the Beatles. Lucy in the Sky from Diamonds, you know. But it's kind of it's just an allusion. Not to say that I stole it, but it's an allusion to that actually. So why not put like a feminine name to an entity that is just so amazing, you know, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can relate that in your own way to I don't know, whatever entity. It can even be an actual person. So the song is inspired with this like very personal conversation that you are having with this entity that is actually greeting you. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Lucy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of this conversation where this entity is bringing me into this world and kind of like genuinely trying to show me something that is beautiful, you know. It wasn't like oh my God, like I'm fucked up, like this kind of deal, you know. It was like very like, wow, like this is incredible. And it may sound funny, but the second verse is literally about me like playing hide and seek with the trees. Because it's literally what kind of was happening. Like I was literally like just looking at a tree and like hiding from that tree through other trees, and like the floor would move, you know. So that's why like the entity then tells me like, let me show you how space can bend itself, and it goes into the bridge, and it's like this atmospheric environment. But yeah, so the story comes from that, and then I try to make the lyrics so that it can be relatable to everyone.
Totally. And I feel like and I appreciate like that you're willing to talk about this, because I've never done acid, but you know, we'll be candid about the drug stuff on here. But like I recently watched this Netflix documentary that's called Have a Good Trip, and it really like pretty amicably like describes like people's like psychedelic experiences like in a good way, in a pretty realistic way, because I feel like in a lot of like the media, particularly American media, it just is so like badly mischaracterized, and it's like, oh, you're gonna jump out a window, you're gonna whatever, blah blah blah. But you know, for you it really genuinely was like a mind-opening experience. And you know, for our listeners, I'll have to obligatorily say don't do acid, but like be careful with it, I feel like, you know.
For sure, man. I mean, the first thing that I have to say, it's something to be treated with so much respect. Like it's not something that I've done like a million times and like, you know, like abuse of it. It's really something that is like very, very, very unique. And I guess that I mean, to a certain extent, I think that is why it was so demonized in the US at a certain period of time, because like, oh my God, you have the 70s and you have all this like rock music and like all these festivals and experiences where everyone's feeling so free about sexuality and about so many things. And in between there's like drugs that can be really powerful, but to a certain extent they were, of course, like very abused, which gave a certain image to it, you know. Which sucks about it is though that a lot of the scientific experiments that were being done during the 70s about acid were like just eradicated because of how demonized it was, you know. Which would have been important to kind of explore in a very, you know, precise and responsible way, because I'm not just gonna say like, do whatever, you know. But it could have been a really interesting thing for the US with all its power and capabilities to explore a bit more. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone either. I'm not gonna be like an advocate for that type of things here.
totally.
But I do think that if you're very like okay with yourself and you go with a certain mindset, like you can have a really spiritual experience for sure.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Yeah, and sort of another thing they talk about in that documentary is like the, and look at like people like Timothy Leary who are doing research about it with the sort of context of using it to help people, like people with anxiety disorders. And especially now, I don't live in Oregon anymore, but recently in Oregon they legalized like the use of psilocybin for recreational use, but also like they had used it for people with like, again, like anxiety disorders or like different like personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, we were really stunted by sort of the portrayal that has had so much in the US,
Mm-hmm.
where I feel like if it wasn't so demonized, we could be, approaching medicine and stuff differently than we already are.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, for sure. I mean, it is a very strong thing too. It's not just something to be taken lightly either.
Hmm.
But for sure, I think that it could have been
Yeah.
explored in a better way. It just became this thing about, and it was not just about drugs. It was about like rock and roll and just the whole vibe. Like that is not good.
Hmm.
So like everything was demonized, and in Mexico too, and in Latin
Right.
America too. It's just obviously the U.S. has had a bigger like scope because everyone is paying attention to what's happening there.
Hmm.
But I guess it happens everywhere. I mean, the moment that you give like power and freedom to people in a certain time of society, just like the media and the government freaks out.
Totally. Yeah. Again, I love that. Like the moment you give people power, they, start to realize their capability and stuff. So yeah,
For
I
sure.
love that. That's awesome.
Hmm.
But yeah, so moving on a tiny bit. So let's talk about How to Make It Feel So Real. The song. So talk me through. I'm really curious because I nerd out about a lot of the
Hmm.
production stuff. So like, what kind of synths were you using for this? Like, what kind of synths do you tend to use for these? Like, feel free to get as like nerdy as you want.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for example, for how to make it feel so real that you were asking me, uh, I mostly use a Prophet. I have a Prophet Rev 2, which is just amazing. I love how much you can
Oh
do with
yeah.
it. And it's just incredible. Before moving back to Ecuador, I lived with two friends that also studied electronic production and design. So actually, that was the first time that I dived into synthesis and actually like started understanding it. And I just loved it. Like I loved it so much. And
Mhm.
I wasn't a keyboard player, but I was like, I need to get my hands on a Prophet because I've been a huge fan of James Blake, and just like the sounds that he got out of that thing were for me were mind blowing.
Yeah.
So I got one not just for me, but I was like, this is gonna also be very useful if I produce with artists and stuff, so they can use it. And I ended up falling in love with it because you can just like do so many things in the Rev 2. And then Tommaso recorded, I guess, some pianos with a Nord. He recorded some lines with an OB6,
Mm.
and the instrumental line of How to Make It Feel So Real is a plugin of a Mellotron, which the
Oh,
Mellotron is
cool.
also like, what? It's incredible. It's not a synth, but it's still a pretty amazing keyboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to ask me something more about it, I don't know what else I can talk about, like the Prophet, but it's just is what I used the most,
Yeah,
yeah, in
dude,
terms
that's
of synth.
perfect.
Cool.
And then sort of like, did you have like a similar experience, like specifically like to Lucy that you were drawing on for this song? Like what was that influence for this track?
I wouldn't say it's like one specific experience itself, but it is the feeling of just when you're caught up in a situation that you don't really know how to get out to from, and maybe you don't want to, but it is kind of pulling you back from being yourself and from feeling like you're absolutely free of diving into a world that maybe other people don't understand. So I think a lot of people can relate to that too. And yeah, the lyrics say to believe that I need something and be completely wrong. So in that sense, I'm like talking about my fears of like maybe I have to let go of this thing so that I can feel this way, but like I fear that I might be wrong. I might fear that I'm growing too fast and like going into the unknown, that sort of thing. I kept the lyrics pretty like simple and not, the first verse and the second verse actually repeat.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a powerful statement to kind of like put it out there, like how to make it feel so real if you control me. It can be a situation, it can be a person, it can be yourself, holding yourself because of your own stuff. But yeah, it's that in terms
Nice.
of what the song
That's awesome.
means.
I love that. Like you have, like songs that you have really specific stuff, like, inspirations and everything, but then also just drawing on, less concrete like experiences and everything. That's a cool like balance to strike, I feel like, as a songwriter. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
really
sure.
cool.
For sure. That's the way.
Yeah, man. Cool. So, moving on a little bit. So what in your sort of musical career, what do you feel like some like struggles have been for you? And like, what are in your mind, like some hurdles that you feel like you've had to jump over?
I think the biggest one, the biggest like struggle I went through was comparing myself too much to other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as I was saying, like I think the coolest thing I discovered, especially with this album, is that I understood how myself, with the way I grew up, how I function in that context. So like, when you're someone that just like loved music but wasn't like practicing every single day, and then you
Yeah.
go to Berkeley and you see all these people just like going insane. For a bit, like I had a period in school where I was like, I don't think I want to be a musician anymore. Like I kind of left it aside for a little bit. I was like, I'm gonna focus only on my music production and stuff. And this I have to give a lot of. I'm very thankful for the people I had around, because they were the ones that actually looked at me and were like, "What the hell, man? Like you have potential. Like stop for a second, and just like realize, And when I started realizing those things, I stopped comparing myself, because I think that is the biggest mistake. I mean, compare yourself if it's to admire people. That's what I can say. I feel like the things that I've most learned is when I've admired someone that can do something that I can't. Because when you admire, you're not in the position of being like, oh, but I can't do that. Oh, shit. You're actually like, oh, that person is amazing. What can I pick from their brain to make what I want to do better? So when I stopped comparing myself, I kind of opened this door of realizing that my voice, especially with voices, because a lot of people can play like similar, but voices, no, I wouldn't say only voice, but I mean in general, you are your own color. Like
Mm-hmm.
your voice and the way that your body resonates is a completely different color from anyone else. So like, it doesn't matter if you have like 1,000 chops. If you have something to say with your color, then you have the first step of the way. So I guess that was something I struggled with and learned a lot from. Another thing I would say, I mean, not really a struggle, but something that I've had to admit that is kind of my weakness, is that I was never the type of musician that like literally practiced every single day. I guess that's why I've been open to just doing it. But as a kid, I was never the guy that would just practice every single day playing drums.
Yeah.
And of course that makes you learn a lot of discipline. So especially when it comes with things of engineering, when I understood this in college, I was like, maybe I'm too late to be like an incredible drummer. But now I don't believe that, because now like you can play until you're 70 years old and you'll improve. But at that point I was like, take that same mistake and apply it to your engineering skills. So I really had to bring up my chops in there, because there were many things that I didn't understand and didn't know. And never be afraid to ask. I mean, I think that is one of the biggest advice I can give to someone. Like, if you're gonna compare to someone, compare yourself by admiring that person.
Yeah.
And go and ask. Don't be afraid of asking, because literally a hallway chat can teach you something about engineering or production or whatever that you're gonna apply forever. That if you didn't have that conversation farther along the way.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Just real quick, like what, you kind of touched on a bunch of really good talking points, but in general, like specifically for younger people, like what would your advice be for taking on getting into production, songwriting, playing an instrument, whatever? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is patience. Lots of patience. Just like believe in what you're doing, man, because when you're going into artistic careers, whether it's art, sculpture, music, film, at the beginning you're gonna have to do a bunch of free work, you know. Like what I was doing with the craft sessions, it was all just for the pure purpose of building a craft. And I feel like if you decide to study something like that, you're gonna have a lot of those moments where you have to keep that in mind. Just like, okay, you have an advantage from a lot of people in the world, that is that you decided to do what you love. So that means that in order to be the best at what you do, you've got to put in the work and be really patient, even though at the beginning you might not see money, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the first time in my life that I'm seeing money out of music, and also being like a teacher and teaching production to people. Because I also do that besides making music. I like make these courses and I bring people into my home studio and I just make them have as much fun as they can, you know? And it's just that. It's patience. Whenever you're doing something, remember that it's not just to complete a task, but it's actually to build your craft. It is very different when you have like a boss and you have to just respond a bunch of emails every day and you have to like do like, you know, office work that maybe you do and maybe you just didn't learn anything. You just literally like made money. But when you're making something about production, anything that you're doing, you're definitely bringing it to your craft. And the other thing that I want to say, and this is more like decision making career wise stuff, is this concept that taught me my teacher Enrique Gonzalez in school. That it's this: in order to take a gig, look at it as if you have a triangle and you have to have 2 points of that triangle in order to take the gig. The first part of the triangle is if you enjoy the music that you are producing or working on, if it just brings you like automatic like satisfaction, you know. The second point is if there is money involved, and the third point, if by doing that job you get to open a really important opportunity or see something that might really help your career in the future.
Yeah.
If you have 2 of those points, get the gig. And what I found is that is so true, because gigs that I've taken that only have 1 of those points, I'm like, I just want this thing to be over. Like then I feel like in an office job, you know? Then I feel like in an office job, like I've taken a project that it's literally just because of the money. And I'm talking about like actually producing an EP or a song, you know, which takes a bit. It's not like just a one-day thing. If it's something about engineering, yeah, I would do it just for the money because it's like a one-day job. But if it's like about an artistic creation, the times that I've just done it for the money, I've been like, oh, fuck, dude, no. But the other times I've done things for free and it has opened doors and it has given me experience and I've just enjoyed it and then I do a good job, you know. So I think that's a good tip for anything artistically.
Absolutely. That's awesome, dude. I couldn't think of a better way to end the podcast.
Cool.
Felipe, thank you so much for being the guest this week. Real quick, like, where can our audience find you? Like, do you have any like quick social media plugs or anything?
Yeah, I mean, for Mojo Mist, I'm on Instagram, and also I'm starting to use TikTok because I find that it's a really useful tool.
Yeah.
But you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Spotify, on all the platforms, of course. And then if you want to follow the other projects of mine, In the Universe is my other band, which I also have an EP and a full album out. And then I hope our listeners can understand it, but my band from Ecuador is called La Fábrica de Títeres, which is the puppet factory. And same, you know, Instagram, everywhere. I am there. So if you go and look me up as Mojo Mist anywhere, you'll find the rest of my projects as well.
Awesome, dude. So good. I'm so glad to have you. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Adam. This was really cool.
Yeah, dude. All right, folks. This has been Early Reflections. I'm Adam Daniel Jones. Find us on Facebook at Early Reflections with Adam Daniel Jones. We're on Instagram at Early Reflections Pod, all lowercase. And remember, Early Reflections have an important role in determining the sound and character of a space. See you soon.